in the winter of 1938. A pregnant girl was brought down from the mountains of eastern Kentucky on a stretcher made from flour sacks and hickory branches. She was 17, her spine curved like a question mark, her jaw hung at an impossible angle. When the doctor at the county hospital first examined her, he found bones that had never properly fused, teeth growing in layers like shale rock, and a skull compressed on one side, as if squeezed by an invisible hand since birth. But it was what he found in her blood that made him lock the examination room door and telephone the state health department. The tests came back 3 times. Each time, the numbers told the same impossible story. Her DNA was folded in on itself in ways the doctor had never seen outside of laboratory mice, deliberately bred for genetic research. When he asked her family who the father of her baby was, they went silent, not defensive, not ashamed, just silent, as though he had asked a question in a language they did not understand. Her name was kept out of official records. The town where she came from doesn't appear on most maps. And the baby she carried, the one that should never have existed, would reveal a bloodline so tightly wound around itself that scientists later called it a genetic miracle that she was even alive. She had come from a place the maps forgot, a valley hemmed in by ridges so steep that sunlight barely touched the creek beds for a few hours each day. Locals called it Marrowbone Hollow, though no one remembered why. Maybe for the creek that ran red in spring, or for the cattle bones that surfaced after heavy rains, washed up from old graves. The road ended miles before the hollow began. Beyond that, there were only paths, worn thin by bare feet and mule hooves, winding through forests older than the nation itself. Few outsiders ever went there. Those who did came back quiet, eyes unfocused, as if the mountains themselves had shown them something better left unseen. The people who lived there were pale, narrow-shouldered, slow in their speech, quicker in their silence. They called each other kin without explaining how. The same names echoed through every gravestone: Mullins, Combs, Napier, Trent. 12 names in 200 years passed around like heirlooms. By the time the county began keeping records, the bloodlines were already looping in on themselves. Birth certificates marked father unknown, or same as above. Church books listed marriages between first cousins, sometimes double cousins, brothers marrying sisters from another family, producing children who shared all 4 grandparents. It was a valley court in its own reflection, a place where the past never truly died, it just changed faces. Dr. Harold Stevens began his inquiries carefully. He told the townspeople he was studying rural health. They believed him at first. He visited one cabin after another, asking about illnesses, family deaths, infant burials. Each answer drew him closer to a truth the valley had buried under generations of silence. He discovered that every family in Marrowbone Hollow traced back to 4 settlers, 2 brothers and 2 sisters, who had arrived around 1790. They married one another's children, and those children did the same. What began as survival became custom. What began as custom became law. There was a reason no preacher stayed long in those hills. There was a reason no census taker ever came twice. Old stories whispered of a sickness that wasn't caught, but born. A weakness that crept through the blood, twisting limbs, bending spines, dulling minds. They called it the kin curse. Women bore stillborn infants. Men went mad in their 30s, hearing voices that sounded like family calling from the woods. The house where she had been born still stood when Dr. Stevens first rode up the narrow ridge road, a sagging cabin built from chestnut logs. its roof patched with rusted tin and tar paper. Chickens scratched beneath the porch. Smoke rose from a chimney that leaned like it had grown tired of standing. Inside, the air smelled of lye soap, wood smoke, and something faintly sweet, the scent of decay trying to disguise itself. The girl's mother met him at the door. She was barefoot, her dress washed to threads, her eyes a grey so light they seemed blind. She said little, gestured toward the back room. The girl lay on a rope bed beneath a quilt, her face half hidden by shadow. A Bible sat open on the floor beside her, pages warped by damp, when Dr. Stevens touched her wrist. She flinched, not from fear, but instinct, as though the body itself recognized intrusion. Her pulse was erratic, stuttering like a heart unsure of its own rhythm. Her belly, heavy with child, moved once beneath the quilt, and the doctor thought, perhaps she will not live long enough to deliver. But what unnerved him most wasn't her body. It was the silence of the house. No laughter, no conversation. Only the creak of the floorboards and the faint sound of something scratching beneath them. Rats, maybe, or restless ghosts of memory. He asked the mother who the father was. She only said, "There's no need for that name to be spoken." When he pressed, her lips trembled. "He's family," she whispered. That night, he stayed in town and wrote for hours. The deformities, the symmetry of wrongness, the girl's jawline that matched her mother's too precisely, her eyes reflecting both sides of the family at once. It was as if the valley had begun carving its own children in repetition. A slow erosion of individuality until only resemblance remained. In the morning, he went back. The girl's younger brother watched him from the trees, head tilted strangely, pupils uneven, unblinking. When the doctor nodded, the boy smiled with too many teeth. Later, while drawing blood, Dr. Stevens noticed a birthmark shaped like an eye on her shoulder blade. She said, "We all have one." The weeks later, the lab reports arrived. The first dismissed as contamination. The second, a warning. Genetic profile inconsistent with human baseline. The third, confirmation her DNA was catastrophically inbred. Patterns repeated, sequences folded back. Identical gene pairs inherited from both parents at levels higher than anything recorded in modern humans. It was not merely cousin marriage. The family had become a single, coiled organism folding inward on itself. He returned to the hollow. The family met him outside, stoic, ancient faces carved from the same bone. The oldest man said, "We don't need your science. We know what we are." He turned and walked away. Dr. Stevens noticed something unnerving. The air felt heavier. Shadows refused to move with the sun, and the same birthmark appeared on almost everyone he examined. He started asking questions in town. The old preacher finally whispered. 4 settlers came through the mountains. 2 brothers, 2 sisters. They built their homes side by side, said their seed would stay pure. But purity can rot, same as anything else. One night, he found a skinned cat folded neatly on his porch. A warning. Yet he returned, compelled by a gravity he could not resist. By early autumn, the girl's belly hung unnaturally low, the child pressing, alive and deliberate. Her eyes whispered secrets, his listening. Dr. Stevens could only watch, paralyzed, as her body seemed to hold a pulse not her own. The family refused hospital intervention. That night, he glimpsed them by the creek, firelight flickering. The girl drank from a dark jar, her pupils splitting in twin circles. When he arrived the next day, the cabin was empty. Only the rope bed remained, soaked, and carved above it, "We keep the line unbroken." The hollow fell silent for decades. Roads and electricity reached the valley, but the families stayed hidden. Dr. Stevens aged, taking photographs and notes in secret. When he died, his daughter uncovered boxes of evidence, blood vials, skeletal photographs, genealogical charts, and gave them to Dr. Elizabeth Morehouse. She reconstructed the girl's genome. 35 to 40% homozygosity, levels lethal in most mammals, recessive disorders, cognitive impairment, organ malformation, yet she survived. Morehouse traced descendants. Some carried subtle markers, echoes of the coiled bloodline, diluted across generations. Others showed almost nothing. The valley remained indifferent. Trees reclaimed cabins. Stones marked graves swallowed by forest. Yet the pulse of history persisted, faint, hidden, unbroken. The girl, the mother, the hollow, the bloodline, all became whispers, shadows in the mountains, a testament to isolation, repetition, and the horror of a family folded in on itself. And now, it rests with you. What would you do if you discovered that the mother who raised you was also your sister? That the blood which gave you life had been coiled for generations, straining to undo itself. The mountains keep their secrets still. The hollows are deep. Somewhere beneath rotting timber and thick moss, the girl lies, not as a curiosity, not as a caution, but as a human being who bore the weight of generations before she could ever walk. History is written not just in books, but in what families refuse to record. And sometimes, only the brave are willing to uncover it.